Welcome to Dune Chapter by Chapter. I'm Dominic. So this is it. This is the final chapter of the book. Now, in the previous chapter, we saw the first appearance of the Emperor. We have heard about him throughout the book, but that was his first appearance. Also there we saw the first appearance of Princess Irulan, and that chapter, the Baron was summoned, and he had to kind of answer for all the things that were going south there on Arrakis. And we seen what happened, what was the fate of Alia after she had gotten captured. So there we seen the death of the Baron by Alia. She killed him with a Gom Jabbar. Then we seen the Emperor bear witness to the attack against his big metal tent that he had there, and all the sandworms coming in, and all the Fremen riding them, and then the battle between them and the Sardaukar, and all this crazy stuff. So that's what happened in the last chapter. So now, here we are at this face-off that was being built up throughout the book. Paul facing off against, the people who were plotting to bring down House Atreides. The last member of House Harkonnen, Feyd-Rautha, and you got the Emperor, Princess Irulan, you got Gaius Helen Mohim, the Bene Gesserit Truthsayer for the Emperor. Count Fenring is in there as well, and they're all a part of his entourage. So the chapter starts off where they're back in the place they had to escape from, their palace at Arrakeen. And, they're looking around, and now Paul's getting flooded by all these memories of his time there. And same thing with his mother. And now he's summoned for Chani to show up there, but she's still dealing with the death of their son. And so all this is going on. And while all this is going on, the Emperor is still holed up in his ship that's still on the ground. And so his Sardaukar army has been effectively defeated. And Paul and his Fremen have basically won the battle. And so his mother, and in this chapter, Paul's mother asks, "Where is Alia?" And then Paul explains to her that she's out killing off the wounded Sardaukar and taking their body for their body's water and all that. And Jessica's actually kind of shocked by this. How can she do this? Because, you still have Alia, who's still basically a child, but she doesn't have the mind of one at all. And then Stilgar comes, and he gives Paul a report that they found Raban's body. Now, here's something I have to talk about this for a second. It's the death of Raban. Now, maybe I overlooked it while I was reading the chapters and missed it somehow, but I thought that Raban's death was described in this book towards the end, and that it was the villagers that he was oppressing and all them, they were the ones that captured him and cut his head off. Now, but it seems to, it's not in the book. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking that maybe they talk about it in Dune Messiah or something like that, or remembering it. I'm getting events from two different books mixed up or something, or things that were said. And I don't know if I missed it reading the past chapter or not. So I don't know. Someone in the comment section helped me out with that one, because I couldn't even solve that one with a Google search. Now, did they talk about past events in Dune, during Dune, in the book of Dune Messiah or Children of Dune? And is that where it's mentioned how Raban died? Because they don't describe it so far in this book. And I thought they might have in this chapter, but even this chapter they don't. They just say that they found Raban's body, but they don't say how he died. And then they also go to find the Baron. But what happens here is Paul already knows they found the Baron's body, and because of his prescience. And so Stilgar is going to tell him before he gets a chance. Even Paul tells him, "Well, I already know. I know that the Baron is dead." So Stilgar is amazed by this. Now, what's really interesting about this chapter is you see the final end to Paul's arc. He's gone through this arc of, he was always fearing this path in the future that led to this massive jihad, this holy war that would spread right throughout the universe, that he would set off, and he was trying to avoid that throughout the whole book. And now, as we can see, he's kind of falling into that role. There's no avoiding that future, and he's even starting to accept it, and he's seeing it, because there's like little hints here and there that he's not the same Atreides anymore. He's not like his father. When he talks about all the different equipment they could gather up and what did the storm destroy and what it didn't destroy, Gurney Halleck points out, when did Atreides, when was an Atreides more concerned about machinery than people's lives? And but Paul's changed now. He's becoming that thing, or he's pretty much become that thing he was fearing he would become, and he's unleashing that future. And so here's another clue about it. His relationships have changed with people, and his relationship with Stilgar has changed. Because now Stilgar is more in awe of Paul. And Paul mentions this as he's talking to himself. He says, I've lost a friend and gained a worshiper in Stilgar. He's no longer a person to me. He's become a creature. And now he's fearing that might happen with Gurney Halleck. So he's because of his prescience and because of this legend that's grown up around him and everything that's going on, he's almost kind of alienating himself from people around him. And so this is all plays into him going into that change. And we can see that he has changed. That arc has come to fruition within this book. Because I've had people, and this kind of is going to go back to that whole thing about this book being people saying that Dune is a white savior trope. And I've had someone in the comments of one of my past videos, I can't remember what video it was, who argued, even if the story isn't a white savior trope, if you just read the first book, it just reads as a white savior trope, because most people won't go on to read the Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, which really hammers home the point. But you don't need to read those books. If you read this one and you understand it properly, it's spelled right out. It's in this book that at the end of the book, he has become that person he didn't want to become. He never became the hero. He becomes like, the next emperor, and he's going to be worse than the guy he's displacing. And the holy jihad is going to be set off no matter what. So you don't need the other books. It's all in this one right here. So now, as this chapter goes on, and they're dealing with, Paul sends all his men to kind of like overlook all the rooms and make sure there's no Harkonnen traps or anything, traps by the Sardaukar or anything. And then when they're ready, Paul summons the Emperor and his entourage into the main chamber there, or the area that they're at in the building. So the Emperor and his entourage arrive. And Feyd-Rautha, of course, is among them. So now, the Emperor and his truthsayer, the last chapter ended with them. They were going to try to take Paul out using treachery. And so they have three traps for Paul kind of in this chapter. And so as they bring the entourage out, Paul's looking them all over. Now the first thing he's got to deal with is the very first trap they lay out for him is he notices that Thufir Hawat is amongst that entourage. And then he tells Gurney Halleck, is Thufir Hawat amongst them? And Gurney Halleck says, yes, he's there, but we don't know what, he might be dangerous because we don't know what the Harkonnens have done to him and what he's gone through since he's been there. So, but Paul still demands to see him, so they let him through. And Paul can sense right away there's some kind of scheme up with this. There's something going on with Thufir Hawat. And there's a lot of the writing in this chapter that is some of my favorite in the book, and I really like it. So as Thufir Hawat comes out, he's kind of like the Emperor and all those guys, they got Thufir Hawat trapped or rigged. They're hoping he will take out Paul for him. And so it seems like everything's going their way. And so as he sees him, Thufir Hawat, he's like this broken, worn down old man and stuff like that. And then Paul knows about the treachery. He can sense it. And even Thufir can sense that Paul senses it. So Paul can see through this one right away. And so anyway, then Paul says to him, because of all your loyal service, you can ask me anything, and I'll grant it. And so this is how it goes in the book. Yet I am my father's son, Paul said. For I say to you, Thufir, that in payment for your years of service to my family, you may now ask anything you wish of me, anything at all. Do you need my life now, Thufir? It's yours. Paul stepped forward a pace, hands at his side. Seeing the look of awareness grow in Hawat's face, he realized that I know of the treachery, Paul thought. Pitching his voice to carry in a half-whisper for Hawat's ears alone, Paul said, I mean this, Thufir. If you're to strike me, do it now. So when he says that, then he doesn't go through with it. Thufir has like a hidden needle on the palm of his hand. He just raises up and shows it to the emperor. And it's not really clear. I don't know if Thufir Hawat like stabbed himself with this needle and killed himself. I'm not really sure. That kind of doesn't really... you kind of go both ways, but I think he kind of does, because he immediately dies after this. So then his body kind of goes limp, and then he doesn't give in to their treachery. He doesn't go along with their plans, and he dies right there. So that first plan, that failed. They couldn't take him out with that one. So now after that failure, he then turns his attention back to the emperor. The emperor is like really outraged by this, because, he accuses Paul, how dare you used atomics and all this kind of stuff. And then Paul just explains to him, yeah, against a man-made, against a structure, no people. I didn't use atomics against people. And it was just so I could get to you faster. And the emperor just can't stand him. And he keeps denying his nobility. He won't acknowledge that he is, the Duke of Arrakis. And but Paul keeps reminding him, you know who I am, stop denying it. You know exactly who I am, and you gave this planet to the Atreides. So then the first thing he has to deal with is, over top the planet, there's all these ships with all these different houses ready to descend. So Paul knows where the real power is, and it's not really, and this is where we find out how the Emperor really doesn't have a lot of power. So first thing he has to deal with is the guild. So he tells the guild, you have to order all these ships back right now. And the guild are like, how dare you, you upstart, and all this kind of thing, and they don't want to listen to it. So Paul tells them, I have the ability to destroy a thing, and whoever has that ability controls that thing. You know I can destroy the spice. You have to listen to me. There's no other way around this. And then they think he's bluffing. They think, you're crazy. You're not going to destroy the spice. That would bring a halt to civilization. But here's where Paul has kind of found a weakness with the guild. See, the guild, they have a prescience from using the spice. Same as Paul. They can see into the future. But they've kind of fallen into this rut where they will, because I guess it's because of their navigation abilities, they always look for the safe path to navigate through. Well, not only do they do this when they're going through fold space, but they also do it with everything else as they see into the future. They always take the safest route. And when it comes to their political dealings or business dealings or anything like that, where Paul has become aware that, the one who always takes the safest route, that's going to lead to stagnation. And it's going to become a weakness and ultimately be the person's undoing. If you never take any chances with anything. So the guild has played it too safe. So they can't see a future where someone would be crazy enough to destroy all the spice. So Paul says, I'm not afraid to go down that road. I'm not afraid to, I have the same prescience as you guys, but I'm not scared to play it unsafe. I'll take a chance. So he says, so then at that point, they realize that he's serious. He will destroy the spice. So they go back and they order the ships. So now we see the Emperor is losing power. We see who really has the power, and it's the guild. And then what happens after that I really like is Paul faces off against the Reverend Mother. And she's absolutely outraged over the realization that Paul is what they wanted him to be, the Bene Gesserit. But she hates it that she can't control him. And so anyway, she keeps talking down to his mother. Well, you did produce the one, so there's that. Maybe we can forgive you for your abomination of a sister. And then Paul snaps at her, you never had any right to forgive my mother of anything, and she doesn't need to apologize to you. So she keeps telling him, you be silent and all this kind of stuff, and she doesn't want to hear it from Paul. And then we get some more really cool dialogue in this scene. I like the verbal dueling between Paul and the Reverend Mother here. Try your tricks on me, old witch, Paul said. Where's your Gom Jabbar? Try looking into that place where you dare not look, and you'll find me staring out at you. And then she says to him, you mustn't speak of these things, the old woman hissed. Silence, Paul roared. The words seemed to take a substance as it twisted through the air between them under Paul's control. The old woman reeled back into the arms of those behind her, face blank with shock at the power with which he had seized her psyche. Jessica, she whispered, Jessica. I remember your Gom Jabbar, Paul said. You remember mine. I can kill with a word. The Fremen around the hall glanced knowingly at each other. Did the legend not say, and his word shall carry death eternal to those who stand against the righteousness? So Paul is like at the peak of his power here, and now it shows he has such control ability of the voice. He has it mastered way more than any Bene Gesserit, that it's almost like a solid impact that hits her when he uses against her. Now, when you watch the David Lynch film, it's like a mental suggestion that causes her to reel back when he tells her to be silent. And in the David Lynch 84 version, because they got the weirding module and they could literally blow up stuff with sound, that's kind of more what that is. It's almost more like a physical force that comes out of him and knocks her back when he says that. And so at this point now, he starts telling the Emperor, he says, there's only really one way out of the situation we're in right now. And then the Emperor gets even more mad because then he realizes what Paul's hinting at. And Paul wants to marry his daughter, Irulan. That's the only way they can deal with this. And so he says, I'm not going to let my daughter marry you. You're just an adventurer. You have no royalty line. You have nothing. Paul gets mad at me again. No, I am of House Atreides. You can't keep denying that. You know exactly who I am. And then Paul realizes that there's a Harkonnen in there. Feyd-Rautha is in the group. So then Paul basically calls him out. Says, I know you got a Harkonnen in there, and is he kind of hiding in your entourage because he's a coward? What's going on? And so anyway, then Feyd, basically answers the call. He gets all mad and, he wants to take Paul on. And so now this is like the second wave treachery. They're going to try to take out Paul, the Emperor. So the Emperor's really glad. Okay, well, even better. Here, take my knife. You can face this guy with my knife in your hand if you accept it. So then Feyd accepts. He goes, yep, I want to fight him. And, I want to kill this Atreides. And now we have Gurney Halleck. He wants to fight this guy really bad. He wants to get his revenge because he didn't really get it. He really wanted to kill Raban, but he was denied that. He didn't get his chance to, so now he wants to take it out on this guy. But Paul tells him, no, you can't. There's certain rules. This is Canley. You can't just attack him. And then we get a little bit more about Gurney's background. And Gurney says, but look, remember what the Harkonnens did to me. I was in the slave pits. What they did to my sister. Well, we don't really know. He just says what they did to my sister. So we know he was in the slave pits on Getty Prime. We know he had a sister. And we know the Harkonnens did something horrible to her. Now, of course, if you read the prequels with Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Smith, they go get into all that, Gurney Halleck's background and the sister and all that kind of thing. But at this point, it's kind of vague. But we know the Harkonnens did something horrible to him. So then Paul takes up the challenge. And so anyway, now they get ready to battle. Paul gets out of his still suit. And then Feyd-Rautha gets ready. And then Paul consents. This is not going to be a straight up battle. I mean, this is a Harkonnen. There's going to be something sneaky going on in here. So as they're kind of circling each other, kind of sizing each other up, how they're going to fight each other. Feyd is wearing some kind of almost like a combat girdle or a fighting girdle. And then Paul wonders, well, maybe the knife is poisoned, the blade is poisoned, but they already had poison snoopers all over it. Then he realizes, there's something with this girdle, and there's some kind of something going on here. Then he realizes, okay, well, there might be a flip dart inside that girdle. That's a poison tip flip dart. And now, what's interesting though is just before he gets into this battle with Feyd, his mother tells him that and this goes to show you how much control and how much sneaky stuff the Bene Gesserit has going on, that they have all these members of royal families conditioned without anyone being aware of it, that they could give them almost like a certain word that would act like a powerful hypnotic suggestion and would basically paralyze them and seize them up. So she says someone like that definitely would have been prepared. She tells Paul the word, but Paul says, no, I'm not going to use it no matter what. I will not use that. I'm going to fight him basically on my own terms. I'm not going to use this word. So as they start, they're dueling, and the way the fight's described, so, it's a pretty good fight, because a lot of the stuff like action scenes, that's, I guess, I don't know if there was one weakness maybe to Frank Herbert's writing, is kind of portraying battles and action sequences. He doesn't really spend a lot of time on them. A lot of time you just hear about them after the fact. They happen kind of off camera, but this, I think he does a good job in portraying this battle, as they circle each other into different fighting styles, and how even though they're not using shields at this point, Paul's used to fighting without a shield because they don't have shields, because it drives all the worms crazy. But he can tell that Feyd still is. He's still kind of acting like he has a shield, the way his stances and everything else. So, as I said earlier, this is the battle where Paul realizes that there's no changing the future. And he even thinks to himself as he's fighting with Feyd, he says, this is the climax, Paul thought. From here, the future will open. The clouds part into a kind of glory. And if I die here, they'll say, I sacrificed myself that my spirit might lead them. And if I live, they'll say, nothing can oppose Muad'Dib. So now in his mind, he knows the jihad's going to go on no matter what happens. And the other interesting thing is, as they're fighting and all that kind of stuff, and actually just before they fight, Paul actually calls Feyd his cousin. So he says, let us do battle, cousin. So then the Reverend Mother hears that, and she realizes Paul knows about his genetic lineage. He knows that the Baron was his grandfather and all that. He knows where he comes from now. And so this really, and as the Bene Gesserit, the old Reverend Mother, is watching this battle, she realizes this could turn out to be an absolute disaster for the Bene Gesserit breeding program, because they've spent 90 generations bringing these two lines up, and they were supposed to merge them. Because remember, Paul was supposed to be a girl that was going to be wed to Feyd-Rautha, and then their offspring was going to be the Kwisatz Haderach. But because Jessica wanted to give her Duke a son, it messed everything up. And now, if they kill each other on this floor in this fight, our plan is destroyed. We're ruined. And so she thinks this is disastrous. This is horrible. And so anyway, then Feyd kind of gets the upper hand. He gets Paul to lose his balance. Paul lands on his back, and then Feyd is getting ready to finish him off. He's getting on him, and he's twisting his side into him, and the flip dart comes out. And then he tells Paul, see your death and all this kind of stuff, and with the poison dart. And then so anyway, as he's doing that, as he's getting in position, he's distracted for a moment, but just for a moment, but enough that Paul gets his way. And Paul keeps, he wants to use that, he's tempted to use that word at this moment now that his mother told him, that word that secret word that will paralyze Feyd. But he just won't give in to that temptation. He just keeps saying, no, I will not say it. I will not say it. So Feyd hears him say this, so he kind of gets a little bit distracted, probably wondering, why is he saying this? What's going on here? What does he mean by that? And it's enough to distract him that Paul actually gets the jump on him, and their positions get reversed. And so now their positions get reversed, and Paul finishes Feyd off by stabbing him up through the jaw and up into his skull. And Feyd dies right there. So then he turns to the Emperor and says, now, see, your forces have been reduced by one more. So how long are we going to go on with this? Just let me marry your daughter and let's get it done. But no, they got one more trick up their sleeve, and that's Count Fenring. So the Emperor looks at Count Fenring, and they're really good buddies, him and Count Fenring, so he can just give him a certain look. And Count Fenring knows exactly what the Emperor wants him to do. He wants him to go kill Paul. So, he wants him to kill this upstart Duke. He's very, but they realize Paul's really good at combat, but Paul's already been through a big battle, just the battle that took place, and then he's just been into a fight and almost came close to death with Feyd. Oh, one, I forgot, I wanted to talk about this. The interesting thing about this final battle is this is where Feyd's own treachery came back and basically was finished off by Paul, but also his own treachery, because when he gets to jump on Feyd and their positions get reversed, Feyd's needle, this poison tip one, gets stuck in the floor and he can't move, he can't roll over, so he's in a vulnerable spot there and he can't get out of it because of his own needle, and that's how Paul kills him, stabs him up through the head. So now getting back to Fenring. So Fenring comes out, and then Paul has seen all these different visions of his body, of his death, but he's never seen who killed him. So he said, could this be the one? Could this be the guy who kills me, this Count Fenring? So when he gets there, they're kind of observing each other and stuff like that. And then Paul has this realization about Count Fenring, that Count Fenring is a potential Kwisatz Haderach. Because there's other people that were potential Kwisatz Haderachs, and Count Fenring is one of them. So Paul has that realization. And then he has a realization because since Paul has accepted that he is the Kwisatz Haderach, and he's basically, gone fully into that role, that he's kind of alienated a lot of people around them. Because he's almost taken on this mythical figure. He's now like this religious figure now amongst his people. He's not just a regular guy anymore. And he can't relate to anyone, but he can relate to this Count Fenring guy, because this Count Fenring was almost there. He almost could have been a Kwisatz Haderach. And so he feels this weird sense of almost like belonging or brotherhood with Count Fenring. And then Count Fenring kind of reads that off of Paul. And because they both kind of feel this way, he decides, I'm not going to kill this guy. So he just looks over at the Emperor and says, no, I refuse. I'm not going to kill him. So the Emperor is like really pissed now. He's like totally pissed. This is his last card to play. He just loses it. And he actually cracks Count Fenring across the jaw. Count Fenring says, because you're my friend, I'm not going to kill you. I'll let you have this one. But, because Count Fenring is a pretty dangerous guy. So now he got, the Emperor's out of tricks. He's got nothing left. This was his last thing. Paul's got control of the Spacing Guild. Got them, Feyd's dead. Thufir Hawat, that the trick they had with him didn't work. Count Fenring, he's not going to do anything with Paul. Now the Emperor has nothing left. So now he says, this is the only thing that's left. I'm going to marry your daughter, and you're going to be sent to Seleucus Secundus, and that's where you're going to be there from now on. You're going to your own prison planet. You're going to be banished there, and that's going to be your new home. And then he also says, and all your Chom company holdings, that's going to be as a dowry. You're going to be completely stripped. So he's not messing around. He even tells his mother, everyone's going to be, all the Atreides are going to have a share of, all the profits from the Emperor's Chom company. And he even gives Caladan to Gurney Halleck. He's going to have an earldom there. His mother wants to go back to Caladan, so he's going to let her go back there with Gurney Halleck. And now, as they're doing all this, and he says, I'm going to marry the princess, and now he's going to basically be the emperor of the emperor of the known universe after this. So now the Reverend Mother has a realization. She realizes now what's going to happen because of this. She realizes, how it's going to be. Now a force way more powerful than the Sardaukar is going to be unleashed upon the universe. And because Paul's talking about, the Emperor, and how he's going to turn Arrakis into a green paradise and all this, and how the Fremen basically worship him and all that. The Reverend Mother has this realization, and she says and this is what she says. The old truthsayer, the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohim, had her own view of the hidden meaning in Paul's words now. She glimpsed the jihad and said, "You cannot loose these people upon the universe." So she's begging, you can't release this force upon the universe. It's going to be unstoppable. But it's too late. It's going to happen. Everything is it's rolling in. There's no stopping it now. And so that's it. Paul's got his way with everything at this point. And so now Chani's been kind of off to the side during this, and now she comes out, if you want me gone, I'll just disappear. And, but as Paul's talking about all the different things he's given out, Jessica says, well, what about Chani? And then, she thinks that, okay, I'm going to have to take a back seat. He's got this princess now he wants to marry. How am I going to fit in here? And so this is like the last couple paragraphs of the book. And I love the way the book ends. So here's what Jessica says, and this is how it plays out. Jessica nodded, feeling suddenly old and tired. She looked at Chani. N for the royal concubine? No title for me, Chani whispered. Nothing, I beg of you. Paul stared down into her eyes, remembering her suddenly, as she had stood once, with little Leto in her arms, their child now dead in this violence. I swear to you now, he whispered, that you'll need no title. That woman over there will be my wife, and you but a concubine, because this is a political thing, and we must wield peace out of this moment. Enlist the great houses of the Landsraad. We must obey the forms, yet that princess shall have no more of me than my name, no child of mine, nor touch, nor softness of glance, nor instant of desire. So you say now, Chani said. She glanced across the room at the tall princess. Do you know so little of my son? Jessica whispered. See that princess standing there, so haughty and confident? They say she has pretensions of a literary nature. Let us hope she finds solace in such things. She'll have little else. A bitter laugh escaped Jessica. Think on it, Chani. That princess will have the name, yet she'll live as less than a concubine, never to know a moment of tenderness from the man to whom she's bound, while we, Chani, we who carry the name of concubine, history will call us wives. I think that's a great way to end the book, too. That's such an awesome, that whole thing. Like, that's like some top-notch writing right there. So, now that's it. Paul solidified his power at the end of the book. He's going to marry the princess. The emperor's going to be banished. Chani's going to be his concubine. And now this pretty much, that's the end of the book. So I guess I just want to talk about just final thoughts on the book as a whole. So this, as I've talked about many times before, is my favorite science fiction book of all time. Probably just my favorite book in general of all time. Like, Dune's really up there. And it was really interesting to go through the book this way. To read a chapter, make notes on the chapter, and then do a video on the chapter, and then discuss it in the comments section with people. And now how I actually did this is I didn't just read the book, but I actually downloaded the audiobook and listened to it as I read along, and read along with the person talking. So that was a really interesting way to do it, because it really helped get some of the ideas across a little easier, and also helped with some of the strange words that are in Dune. Even though I've read it a few times before, some words, there's no way you can know how they sound. I can't anyway until someone actually hear someone actually say it. But it's like a really, I guess, really deep way to read a book, because I really had to read a chapter, go through it, take notes, really think about the chapter, kind of pick the meaning out of the chapter, and then do a video on it, discuss it, and then discuss these ideas with people in the comments section. So it was a really interesting thing to do. And it was a really interesting way to really get in there and read the book. I really enjoyed it. It was, hard work, and, I tried to have these videos done consistently every week, but just things in life would pop up, and I would, have to skip a few weeks here and there, but finally made it to the end, and it was a really fun thing to do. And if you have never read Dune, go out and read it. It's a fantastic book. And for those who are reading Dune and you followed along with each video, I hope that, some of my observations or things I talked about in these videos will help you understand the book a bit more, and maybe help you more easily digest the story. Because Dune is a pretty dense book, and there's lots going on there, lots of themes, lots of symbolism, stuff like that. And it's a book you really do have to read maybe more than once to really get everything out of it, or even a few times. It seems like every time I read it, I get a little something more from the book. And now people have asked in the comment section, am I going to do Messiah of Dune or Children of Dune next? Honestly, I don't know. Still kind of pondering that idea. But as for right now, I'm just going to, for sure, take a break. I'm not going to do another Dune book right away. Because there's other videos I want to do and stuff like that. But I'm really glad that I was able to finish this out and get right to the last chapter. And everyone who's followed along, I want to thank you a lot. It's meant a lot to me. Those who commented and engaged and all that, it was really a lot of fun. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you at the next one.